Hey everyone, welcome back to another DC Full Review. And this time, we're going to be heading on to the newcomer of the CW, Supergirl.
It was a lot of fun. It was very lighthearted and optimistic, which is great. You know, that's what Superman and Supergirl should be.
Yes, it had a good balance of serious and lighthearted moments. Which reminds me, what did you think of Tyler Hoechlin's take on Superman?
He killed it. He did a great job. Yeah, he's a great new Superman. CW is better for having him.
Yeah, they have such good chemistry working together.
I love the scene where they save the plane, even though I thought the flying effect when they were saving the airplane was a little cheesy. It's not so much like someone dangling from a wire, but it is a little bit absurd. But when they land, they have a really nice interaction with the random people who watch them save the plane, and they're just like, "Do you talk to the bystanders?" Yeah, I do. Okay, we'll talk to the bystanders.
Especially with the whole changing his diapers thing.
Yeah, which is really funny that Supergirl's technically older. You know, it's his older cousin, but because of the way that Kal-El's rocket came to Earth, there was a temporal anomaly, and he ended up aging, you know, more than Supergirl.
No disrespect to Henry Cavill, but I feel like in some ways Tyler really stepped up more as Superman.
It wasn't a problem with the way he played Superman in Batman vs. Superman, but it was the way they wrote him. And part of that is because he was just kind of reactionary to everything that was happening in the world around him. He wasn't really making choices for himself. He was just kind of moping and seeing how the world interpreted him and how he could react to that. I saw an article online shortly after the movie premiered where somebody wrote down every single line that Superman said in the movie and tallied it up, and it was about 40-something lines of dialogue. And if you read them from start to finish, it is so obviously clear why his character didn't work in that movie. And it's no fault to Henry Cavill. I think he definitely looks the part, but just Superman the character did not have much agency in that movie. And the version that we see in Supergirl is much more closer to what the character should be.
Granted, they are going for a lighter take with him for Justice League.
Yeah, and I hope they do. I think they're course correcting, especially now that they have Jeff Johns on board.
Plus, even looking at the promotional poster, the colors are more vibrant and brighter than the previous movies.
It's Zack Snyder's aesthetic. You know, he's always doing undersaturated. His color choices are just played down in everything he does.
I just feel that the writers of the movies wanted to give him a more rocky beginning, which could have happened for him before Supergirl came to Earth in the show, because when she does arrive, he seems more respected. I would say we the people wouldn't be so welcoming of the unfamiliar or strange by first glance.
Well, what about J'onn J'onzz? He's a big staple of Supergirl. He started as Hank Henshaw, right?
Yep.
And I personally geeked out whenever I would see him transform into J'onn, because I've always gravitated towards the character. I think he's great and got a great appearance and a great costume, and it was really cool to see him in the show. And I'm very interested to see what his beef is with Superman. They have some sort of history that they're not talking about, and I think that's gonna be really cool to see unfold.
It was actually mentioned later on where they went to South America to investigate something strange going on, codenamed Operation Emerald. It's where they first discovered kryptonite, where J'onn came up with the name. The problem is that Superman wants to destroy the kryptonite, but J'onn wants to keep some of it just in case, which leads to the awkward tensions between them because of their lack of trust to each other. The thing that bugs me is that if Superman can trust Batman with some kryptonite, why not J'onn? Especially since J'onn doesn't need it right away. I mean, they could go toe-to-toe for a while.
And all Superman needs is his heat vision to go toe-to-toe with J'onn. Like, in New Frontier, there's a classic line where Batman's like, you know, I need kryptonite for the alien, whatever. All I need with you is a box of matches. You know, like, Sean's got that fear of fire. So, all that being said, like, it's still really cool to see a live action show with the Martian Manhunter and Superman on screen together. Like, I never thought it'd be in a world where that would happen.
And the fact that we got to see Lena Luthor and Metallo.
That was cool. Yeah, I'm excited to see how Lena Luthor, how her character evolves over the season.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the character before, though technically there was something similar on Smallville with Tess Mercer, who's based off Mercy Graves, but turns out to be Lutessa Luthor.
Mm-hmm. Oh, speaking of, there was Miss Techmacher, who was in the 70s Superman movie with Gene Hackman. I love that moment when she yells at Miss Techmacher.
When my dad first saw it, he was laughing so hard remembering that scene for the movie. He's a big fan of those classic Superman movies.
I think Christopher Reeve is the gold standard. Whenever there's a callback to that kind of stuff, it's always fun.
It's funny that he's one of the few people I know that likes both Henry Cavill and Christopher Reeve's interpretations of Superman. And just to defend Cavill, the 2 movies he was in portray a somewhat more realistic take on how people would react towards aliens living among us.
Although, the way that we actually react to aliens is we just hide it from everybody.
Besides Superman the Scene, I loved Kat and Kara's scenes together. Probably one of the show's biggest strong points.
Clarissa Flockhart's an amazing actress. My partner just binge watched all of Ally McBeal last month. She was a star role, and that was in the early 90s. It was kind of like a lawyer drama. She has a great talent and definitely one of the best parts of the show.
Plus, for the hardcore fans, we got to see more of the classic Cat Grant when she sees Clark Kent.
I was so happy to see that she just melted for Clark Kent. She's always had a crush on Clark and just like trying to win him over. She's like the reverse Lois Lane in a way, where they're very similar in what they do for a living, but have very different approaches. Because like Cat Grant goes straight for Clark, Lois ignores him, doesn't even give a shit about it.
It's funny that Calista Flockhart is 52 years old, even though they don't make her look that old, while this Superman here is 29 years old.
That happens. Calista Flockhart still got it though. You know she's married to Harrison Ford, or was.
I think she still is.
Yeah, I think so too.
Hey, sometimes it pays just to hire younger actors instead of making older ones look younger.
And I think they addressed that in the show. I think they do say something about Kryptonian physiology.
What throws me off is that for the first time, I've seen a Jimmy Olsen that's taller than Clark.
Yeah, I didn't notice that, but that is true. Yeah, the guy that got to play Jimmy is really tall.
Not to mention that he looks a little more muscular than Clark. Granted, for someone that idolizes heroes like Superman, it would make sense for Jimmy to try to get strong himself, as much as he could anyway. It makes me wonder though if Superman needs to work out or not, because I remember during the Flashpoint storyline where Superman was just left in a cell looking very thin.
Yeah, he was kept by the government his whole life.
Of course, under Red Solar Energy he's normal, but I would say leading a regular farm life might have helped form his usual physique. Now for the costume, it's not one of my favorites, but they gotta try using New 52 influences while not making it too similar to Henry Cavill's look. One of the best things about the costume are the cape straps. It makes him look different than Supergirl.
I thought it looked cool. His cape was on the long side, which I think that was cool. There's a really good shot of him walking down the alleyway before soaring into the air that I thought worked really well.
If you think about it, with all the flying Superman does, these straps keep the cape steady, that way it doesn't get in his field of vision. For Tyler himself, I feel like he should have been a bit bigger, both in height and muscle. We can see they were going for a more Christopher Reeve style, especially since Reeve himself didn't put on that much muscle at the time.
Yeah, no, the new Superman's great. And I think Melissa Benoist?
I think her name's pronounced Benoist.
Yeah. She's got a really inspirational personality, very chipper, very like what Supergirl should be. They got a great cast. And again, to go back to Jimmy Olsen, I've seen production pics where he's going to become the Guardian, who it seems like he's going to have an all-silver suit here rather than the Guardian's golden aesthetic from the comics, but I think that could really work.
You know, I've seen a couple memes on Instagram where some people touch up on the color of the suit to make it look more like the comic book version of Guardian.
Oh, okay, nice. But, you know, Jimmy Olsen being a reporter works really well for the Guardian's character because he was always associated with the, I forget their name. I don't want to say the Newsboys, but it was like the News Legion or something like that. They were these characters Jack Kirby created in the 40s. The Guardian's always been associated with journalism in Metropolis. So I think having Jimmy Olsen become that role is kind of natural, you know?
Besides Jimmy's new identity, what's your take on him being one of Kara's love interests?
I've never seen it happen before. In the comics, Jimmy was kind of loosely involved with Lucy Lane, but he's never been involved with Supergirl. From my knowledge anyway. The Supergirl has had very few relationships in the past that I can think of, but primarily she's known for her relationship with Brainiac 5 and the Legion of Superheroes, which the original Kara, very similar to the DC animated universe version, she ends up going to the future and living there full time eventually, and falling in love with Brainiac 5 before dying in Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Though after the premiere episode, they decided to remain friends, for now at least, since Kara wants to figure out what to do with her human set.
That's just the CW drama that they like to throw in there. It's like, we could have the perfect thing, but we can't because it's a TV show and that's how it works. Maybe at the end of the season, we'll talk then.
Or at least if he's after his Guardian.
Well, if Kara Danvers doesn't know what she wants, but Supergirl does, I guess, help her on that side of things, I suppose.
I kind of wish they had Kara choose a different career than Clark, but we'll see where it goes from here.
But yeah, I don't know what Kara Danvers did in the comic books for Secret Identity. The Supergirl that I am mainly familiar with was the late 2000s version that was relaunched by Michael Turner and Jeff Loeb out of the Superman Batman. It inspired the direct-to-DVD Superman Batman Apocalypse, and that's I read the Supergirl series at the time that was accompanied with that, spun out of it, and to be honest, it was a bit more sexualized than Supergirl has been before or since, but it was Kara Zor-El version of it, and she didn't have a secret identity. She was Supergirl full-time, and that was a thing that her character was dealing with, was how to be Supergirl full-time. And she ends up joining the Titans, the Outsiders, the Justice League. She floats around all the teams and can't really find a home. Even though in the Outsiders she starts dating Captain Boomerang's son, who becomes the new Captain Boomerang, and she dates Nightwing for a minute, and when she's in the Justice League, she finally becomes kind of a top tier member. But yeah, the Supergirl I know never had secret identity, so I don't know how that's gonna look in this show. But it's all new territory for me.
Not to mention the fact that our new boss is Snapper Card.
Ah, that's right. Yeah, it's got a lot of good stuff going for it, and I think moving from CBS to the CW was a good move on their part. I don't know how much that affected its budget, but it seems like they're still able to do everything that they need to do. And now that Jeff Johns is in charge, I think that they have a lot more leeway in the creativity, which we can see in the inclusion of Superman as a main character.
Also the fact that the CGI effects seem to have made a big improvement since last year.
The CW is definitely treating their superhero shows with a lot of care and attention.
Definitely, especially at Cadmus without Waller. Granted, Young Justice had Cadmus without her as well.
Well, the original Cadmus also didn't have Waller. Waller became part of Cadmus, I think, in the DCAU, more so than the comic books.
In the original comics, Waller was more tied to the Suicide Squad in Checkmate, correct?
Right, yeah. She definitely started in the Suicide Squad and then moved to Checkmate shortly after Infinite Crisis. She was also part of Lex Luthor's cabinet. She was Lex Luthor's Secretary of State while Lex was president in the comic books.
And especially picked for certain tasks Luthor had planned for her. To quote Batman from the movie, wow. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to see any of the past 2 reviews, just click on the icons. Just one review to go on Legends, and then we can move on to the big crossover, Heroes vs. Aliens. See you later, and happy holidays.